All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott from Jeff Teaches Programming. And what I'm going to do now is to go over, I've got this thing working, and I want to go over what I had to do in order to get it to work. Okay, so there's three files that had to have changes made to them, and I'm going to explain or try to explain as much of them as I can. So I'm going to start with the hardest one, which is the calculator file. All right, now everything here was fine, fine. In here, I changed this so it just said it's I took some of the TypeScript out of it because it just wasn't working. So we just basically did it complete almost the way we did it in JavaScript, if not the same way we did it in JavaScript. All right. But it's possible that could be null, so we put this in here on the end of each one of these. So that was a TypeScript addition right there. All right. Next, in our render function, it's not returning anything, so we added a return type on it, a void. Okay. Next, just so you know on this, I think it was this line right here. For some reason, I had the semicolon inside of here. Don't ask me why, but I did, and I removed it. All right. In our add history that we have right here, we put in there what type the entry was, and the entry is a string. Also, this doesn't return anything, so we set the return type to void. All right. Sometimes when we call reset state, we pass something to it, and sometimes we don't. How is that handled? I'll get to that when we get to the reset state function itself. All right. Next, we have our highlight operator, which, as it says, will visually indicate which should be spelled correctly, operator button is currently active. Well, this can either be a string or it can be a null. So we've got basically a union type in there that says string or null. All right. And other than that, what was added in here? Nothing in here that I can remember. Okay. All right. Now is that reset state. And notice that seed value, we put a question mark before it, which means, for lack of better words, that it's optional. All right. And as it says, if there is no seed, just show 0 as the default value. Okay. And that's all we're doing right here. All right. Then we had our isDigit. This was problematic because we had iDigit there, but yet sometimes when we called it, we had isDigit. So of course, they weren't working between the two of them. All right. Now, again, let's see. I don't think this is returning anything. So we probably could add a void there. And this is not returning anything. So we should be able to add a void there. All right. Again, I'm kind of TypeScripting this out as we're going along. All right. Here's another one. This is the input operator. Well, the operator is going to be, basically it's going to be a string, and again, it does not return anything. All right. There's our input operator. So, okay. Here's our evaluate. I don't believe this returns anything either. Return. I think we could make that a void. Now, if there's any problems with these, I'll remember that when we run it in just a bit. Now, here's calculate. This is returning something, and I had to change these. This is all changed up here. The function itself has not changed. But A is the first number, the number on the left that we're passing in, so we set it's of type number. B is the one on the right. Op is the operator that we're using. Add, subtract, multiply, or divide. And it's returning a number. So again, we're either going to return a plus b or a minus b or a times b or NaN if we're trying to divide by 0 or a divided by b. All right, we've got this format result and it can return something. All right, we could put a string there, I believe. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. Handle %. Again, that's not returning anything. There's no return statement on there. Handle sign. There's no return statement on there either. The dispatch, we had to change this. Sometimes dispatch is going to be called with an action and a value, sometime with just an action. So we've got the question mark there. It is not returning anything, so we set the return type to void. This query selector, I don't even want to get into this, but we had to cast this as an HTML element and basically this one as well. All right. Our key map, we basically set up so that it was a type of a record, and it held a string followed by an array of strings, one or more strings. All right, that's everything that's in there. So I'm going to do a file, save all on this. All right, and close it because I don't need it anymore. Now next I want to go through this file. We did make a one-line change in here, and we'll go over it in just a bit. But I want to go over everything. This is not a big file, so I want to go over it virtually line by line. First, we have our compiler options, and notice it says root dir, all right, and it says /src. That's where the TypeScript source file lives. It's in our source folder. Output or outdir is where the compiled JavaScript file should be transpiled or written to. All right. Then we've got module ES 2022, and that's which module format the compiled JavaScript will use. ES 2022 means a modern import export syntax. Now, it means we're using the latest and greatest. All right. And I don't want to get into ES, but basically it's a European thing because unlike HTML and unlike CSS, JavaScript is really under the purview, so to speak, of the European Union. All right. Okay. Next, we've got module resolution bundler. That's how TypeScript resolves any imported files. Bundler is designed for different tools that we're not using here. All right. Then we've got target, again, ES 2022. That's which JavaScript version to compile down to. All right. Finally, we've got this types thing in here, and that's an empty array. That's which types packages to include. An empty array means none. We're not doing anything that complex in here, so we don't have any. All right. Next, we have source map true. That's going to generate, and you're going to see this in just a minute, a .map file alongside each .js file. So the browser dev tools, we talked a little bit about that when I very quickly went over debugging, but it's a debugging file that we can use. All right, then next, again, we told it to generate the .map file. And then next, we've got declaration true. That'll generate a .t.ds type declaration file for each compiled file. This is really useful if you've got other JavaScript projects that want to be able to use the code that you're writing. Again, not really appropriate for what we're doing. Next, we've got to generate a .d.ts.map file that'll link the declaration file back to the original TS source file. All right. Then we've got no checked index access true. That requires an existence check when accessing an array or object by index, since the value could be undefined if the index is out of bounds. In other words, if you had an index that had 10 or an array with 10 elements in it, you tried to access, let's say, element 25. Next, we've got exact optional property types true. That'll enforce a strict interpretation of optional properties. All right, so a property typed as string, pipe, undefined is treated differently than one marked optional. All right. Next, we have strict true. That enables a whole bundle of recommended safety checks to put in one switch. Null checks, strict function types, and there's other things as well. Finally, we've got skip libcheck true. That skips type checking the .t.ts files inside of node modules. It speeds up compilation time and it avoids possible errors from third-party types that you don't have control over anyway. So that's it for that one. File, save, and now I'm going to close that one. This one, of course, I'm going to leave open. This was our HTML file, and I had to make one change, and that was this was the previous line that was here, and it's been replaced with this one. All right, so it says here, script defer source equals js/calculator.js. Now you know already that what the script file does is it loads the compiled JavaScript file that's located at js/calculator.js. The defer attribute tells the browser two different things. First, it says do not pause HTML parsing to download and run the script. Rather, download the script in the background while the browser continues reading and building the page. It's considered a more optimal way of doing things. Second, do not run the script until the entire HTML page has been fully parsed and all DOM or document object elements, buttons, etc. are available. And this matters because our script references DOM elements like document.getElementID result, for example. Without defer, the script might run before these elements exist, and that could cause the calculator to fail. So in short, what this does is it says download early, run late, never block the page. All right, so now what I'm going to do before I run this, file, save, I'm going to go back to here, and you'll notice there's nothing in my JS right now. And of course, we've got our styles.css file here. We've got our calculator.ts file here, and we've got our index file plus the tsconfig I just went over with you. So let's start clean here, and we're going to say tsc to compile this. It should come back with just, hopefully, there we go, comes back with just our prompt, which means it compiled cleanly. All right, now if we go back to our JS, it's got these files we talked about, that D file, the DTS map that we just went over a bit ago, and a JS map file, which is the map file for this. You can look at these files. I believe you can at least. All right, it's got a whole bunch of junk in it. All right, I'm not good enough that I can really explain any of that to you, but the key point is we now have in our JS, we've got calculator.js. And this should be relatively similar, if not the same, as what we had previously in our previous JavaScript version of the program. So I'm going to close that. And now I'm going to close that. And now I'm going to run this. All right. So run without debugging. We could debug now, I guess, because we've got the debugging stuff in here. So 8 times 3 is 24. 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. 6 minus 20 is negative 14. And 85 plus 33 is 108. All right. And we can notice if we go back to these, if we click on them, we get the answer back in there again. So if we wanted to be able to use part of that. Plus, if we clear the history, it goes back to 0. So now everything is working. So what I'm going to do real quickly, just to show you this, is I'm going to go back here to my front end folder, which is right here. All right. Now what we're going to do next, just so you know, all right, I've got TypeScript here, and that was our calculator. All right. And we've got these BMIs here. What I'm going to do under TypeScript, we have calculator. All right. I'm going to add 2 more folders here. One is going to be called BMI, and one is going to be called payroll. And we're going to do the BMI rather next. All right, so we've got those folders. Now what I can do is basically, all right, we've already got our BMI that's out there up here. So I'm going to grab this BMI 03. Okay, I'm going to grab the entire folder. I'm going to copy it. And then I'm going to paste it. So now I've got, in fact, before we do this, I should have done this first. Because notice how we did calculator, we got JavaScript and TypeScript. I should do it the same way here. So we'll put a folder in here that's called JavaScript. And I'm going to drop that in. Then we're going to create another folder that for now will be empty. That is called TypeScript. All right. Finally, we're going to go back up to our payroll 2. Okay. And I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to go over, oops, to, I don't know what that's even doing here. But I'm going to go over to TypeScript, payroll. I'm going to create a new folder. That's going to be called JavaScript. Paste in that payroll, and then have another folder that for now will be empty. That is called TypeScript. Okay? All right, finally, I'm going to come back, and I want to be here at front end. And let's clear this, and let's do a CD to here. All right, and I'm going to do a git add dot. It says warning in the working copy of this, if that's okay. It's replacing line feeds with carriage return line feeds. Okay, so we've got a git add dot. I'm going to do a git commit -m. The message will be TypeScript calculator added. All right, and I'm going to try at least to do a git push -u origin master. Hopefully I don't get any errors. That's great. I did not. So I'm going to come back in here, and I'm going to go to GitHub. And I'm going to go to GitHub for Jeff Teaches Programming. And I'm going to go to front end. And what you should see now under TypeScript, TypeScript-Calculator added right now. So that's in there. That's all I'm going to do for tonight. And I hope tomorrow to be able to come in and start working on the BMI program. I might even be able to knock that out in a day. I don't know. All right, my hope is that by next weekend, we'll be done with this, and then I'm going to go on. I don't know where I'm going to go from here. I might do some Java, not JavaScript, but Java. I might do something else. All right, we'll see. Talk to you soon. Thanks.